I don't need to know what you mean, apparently, because I am speaking with Chris. So, Chris,
Yeah.
where are you from?
Where am I from? I'm from a small town in Pennsylvania called Franklin.
Named
Yeah.
after Ben?
Yes, definitely. It's I believe it's actually older than, I don't know. It's an old place. It's the also the birthplace of the oil industry. The first commercial oil well was dug there. So the hillsides are just littered with these aging Victorian mansions.
Oh, great. And you lived in one of those?
No. No, I wish. No. It was. I mean, it's a nice little town. It's just kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, so then from there you decided to go to University of Pittsburgh. You got to be an undergrad, and you got into journalism. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. I studied journalism at the University of Pittsburgh as an undergrad and Ohio University, the Scripps School of Journalism there. I mean, you kind of rattled off a bunch of my accolades there.
Yeah.
But I got out of grad school in 2009, and there were not any jobs in journalism or advertising, both of which I had studied at OU. And I went back to teaching improv. I started teaching improv in 1998, 99, somewhere in there. So I've been doing it for 20 years.
Wow.
And I got all the way back into it here in New York. I've worked for the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, for the training center there. And I decided to go into business for myself.
So you're a funny guy.
You know, that's that's up to individual taste, I suppose. But yeah, I think so.
Okay, good, because it says we do know that a lot of your students, improv students, I guess, as opposed to any kind of journalism teaching you were doing on the side, just kidding, have gone on to Saturday Night Live, The President Show, very funny, Inside Amy Schumer, The Kroll Show, some really good shows here, Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
New Girls, the only one I haven't seen on the list, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Happy Endings. So you've got a pretty good track record for turning out some good ones, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's only so much I'm doing. My job as a teacher, as a coach, is I serve as a guide. I help somebody figure out where they want to go, and then I help them get there. It's hard for me to claim that, you know, other people's successes are my own, because really they're getting themselves there. I'm just kind of spotting them.
You're a spotter.
Fixer. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you're doing what you're doing. You're teaching.
Yeah.
You're teaching folks, and you know, I went to Second City for a couple of years with a couple of different teachers back then. I didn't finish the whole package, and then I got into stand-up later on. But you know,
Where was the second?
I'm sorry.
Where did you do Second City? Was that at Toronto?
In Toronto. Yeah. Not the real one. The second one should have been called Third City, I guess.
Third City.
But anyway, so before we get into, I really want to talk about the creative. I really want to speak about and have you speak about how it is that you employ your technique involving cannabis.
Sure.
But before we get to that, I want to play a little clip here from you, and you're on YouTube, and you're speaking about ADD, depression, and bipolar disorder. And now I'm not going to play the whole clip, but we're just going to get a little taste of this. And I just want you to talk about that and how you got ahead of that curve and how you deal with that. Or you might have put it behind you completely, or how you mitigate it if you haven't done that. So here's a little clip from Chris. Here we go.
My name's Chris Griswold. I'm an improv teacher. When I was 7, I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. At the time, it was called hypoactive. Now it's called inattentive type. As a teenager, I was diagnosed with depression, later classified as dysthymia, which is a nice base coat of depression. And then in my 20s, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I don't like calling it mental illness because I don't feel sick. The thing that I came around to understanding was that a lot of the things that make me special and make me talented and make me, you know, of value to myself and to others are derived from the things that make life difficult for me at times. So it's not that there's something wrong with me, it's that I just have a different set of circumstances.
Okay, so That's pretty brave stuff. You're on this. What is it, Project Urock, and you are okay.
Right. Yeah.
And
There's actually, I think there's two mental health programs. One that's Project You Are Okay, and then I think there is also like a You Rock program.
Yeah, that's how it came off to me.
They're not connected to each other at all. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's important to talk about mental health. I think a lot of people don't talk about it, and it's just one thing that's important for me to get across to people is that a lot of things that are labeled as mental illness are really just a different mindset or a different set of circumstances. And that doesn't mean it's not all negative. You know, I think that's really important for people to understand. We go through a lot of different mindsets. We go through a lot of altered states of consciousness just in life. Like we've all been in the experience. We've all had the experience where you're driving down the road and then you realize, oh, I need to make a turn here because you've been so deep in thought. Things
Right.
sort of become automatic or autonomic. And so that's what I started. The reason I got obsessed with improv was it started speeding up my brain. I have, as I think I mentioned there, I have ADHD, inattentive type. It takes me longer to respond to things mentally. But with improv, I was able to put myself in motion and catch myself. I knew where I knew what people were saying to me much faster than before I had gotten into improv.
So when someone's talking to you in improv, you're better able in that moment to sort out what they're saying and come up with the yes and or the funny reply or setting them up for their next line. You're playing the game better.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about in life. You know, after learning improv, it sped up my brain all the time.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. In improv, that's where you picked it up, and then you were able to
Yes.
to bounce back really quickly in that sort of artificial construct, and then you took that into reality.
Yes, and I think of improv as sort of a access panel to your brain. You can use it as a way you can practice skills in your improv that will then affect your life. I bring that approach with me to my teaching, and I got to a place where people started calling me their improv shaman. It was like over the course of a week, I had 2 different people call me that, and I started thinking about that more and kind of expanding the way that I approach my teaching. And I think that's part of what led me to experimenting with having these workshops where people come in and they've already smoked a little, and then we use that mindset. We use that sort of mental preset to bring forth some of the skills that they might not be using all the time.
Okay, so I like this if I have it right. What you're saying is you learned all this, you figured it all out, you got the bounce from improv that you were able to bring into your real-life conversations, which gave you a lot more confidence. And and then you were able to take that and bring it into the class, and then adding the cannabis.
Oh yeah. No, the cannabis, because the thing is, the cannabis is it is a small part of what I do overall, but these workshops they're amazing. I really love doing them. It was important to me. I knew that it would sound fun to do. I mean, it sells itself, certainly, but it was important to me that it not be a gimmick, that people actually get something out of it. And it really has had a dramatic effect on people who have taken the workshop.
And are we allowed to say where this happens? Not an address or anything?
I'm sorry, you broke up one moment.
Okay.
What'd you say?
I said, can you tell us whereabouts you do these sessions and how you go about taking your class of, I don't know how many people you have, and then partaking? I imagine you do it all at the same time and sort of get ready at the same time. How does it work?
Well, they come in. I don't provide anything. I don't. They come in with whatever they have. They smoke beforehand. I ask that people don't get in over their heads with it. I want them to still be in a kind of
So it's up to them to get high before they come in.
Yes. Yeah.
I was just curious about that because I thought if you have someone getting high 10 minutes ago versus someone who did a bowl like an hour ago.
Right. No, it's supposed to be right before the workshop.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Right before.
And this is in New York?
This is in New York. This is in Brooklyn mostly. Is where I've run it. The next ones I'll be running will be in the financial district of Manhattan. But I've also traveled with it. And one of my favorite places was in Providence, Rhode Island. And that was probably one of the biggest most attended ones that I've run. We probably had 30 some people there, and they surprised me. 5 of the people that were there had never done improv before. And so I threw out my lesson plan and I adjusted to make room for these 5 people that had never done this before. And I just sort of rewrote the curriculum on the fly that day. And it was a really, really amazing experience.
Talk about improv. So that's,
sure.
You just drew up a class plan on the spot. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So go ahead and tell us then, how does it begin? I mean, give us a couple of ideas about what you, because the thing that I was able to glean from researching your, and I might have this wrong, but I hope not, is that you have found that the class being on, and I'm sure some of them have done some improv before, but you had those 5 new folks. But you took people, so you've got brand new newbies going right into the cannabis level, and then you've got other people that have done it before going in on the cannabis level and having done it not on cannabis, presumably, if that's possible. And then, but you have found particular threads to pull on that are more effective in a cannabis-laden class than otherwise. Is that right?
Oh, definitely. For one, it sets a different tone for the workshop. It's also important to note that I am sober during these workshops. That I am sort of safeguarding everyone. I'm kind of seeing over everybody, and they can feel a little bit more like there's somebody watching over them. So there's it's always important for me to create a safe space for people in any of the workshops or classes that I run. But so I'm completely stone cold sober in this. They come in and it eliminates a lot of their anxiety. A lot of the real enemy of improv is fear. It's anxiety. It's worry about what's going to happen and what could come next. And I always keep in touch with my students afterward and ask for their experiences, because I want to shape this and make it stronger, make it something that people can really grow from. And a lot of them tell me that they do things in that workshop for the first time. They initiate the scene. They give the first line in an improv scene. A lot of people get scared of that. Or they play characters, or they were better able to understand the intentions of the person they were performing with. And then since then, because they had that sort of muscle memory, they're able to continue to do that. So it just opens up skill sets. Yeah, I mean, everything for me is in improv is psychology and ritual behavior. I do a lot of reading on brain function and psychological tests and things like that. And so it was really nice to bring all of this together in these workshops and see the effect both in the workshop and afterwards of how people experienced it and what they were able to do.
Yeah, so you did how much teaching of this before you introduced cannabis to the routine? Like how many years?
I've been teaching for 20 years.
So 20 years in, you go, hey, let's try this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. I mean, I had never smoked with any sort of regularity up until a couple of years ago. And I got some insight into, I'm always kind of keeping an eye on myself mentally, just trying to check in with myself, see where I am. I try to be very present. And I was thinking about how the cannabis was affecting my brain and my perception and my behavior. And then I applied that to the improv.
Wow. That's great. So now you've taken cannabis and done improv, as well as being the teacher when you're sober.
Honestly, I have not.
You gotta try.
It would be about. Here's the thing. I gotta say this. This is important to me. I always advise my students that they should not be inebriated in any way for a show unless that's the theme of the show. Because I've seen improv shows where one person is drunk or stoned or whatever, and the rest of the team is taking care of them. I don't think that's okay. But if you've got a show where it's like, hey, come and we're gonna do cannabis themed improv, or we've got a team that's high, I think that's totally fine.
Yeah, that would be good. You should try that. We have
sure.
We've done shows here, and yeah. I'm sure we weren't the first to do it in Toronto, where it's a drunk show. and you do a set, and then the same comics are drinking like crazy. There's a little intermission, and they come back, and then they do another set or whatever they want to do, and they're hammered. And
that's really funny.
It's pretty funny. Yeah, the crowd would really take pleasure in seeing people just change. The same folks that were up there before, they're just different. But that's amazing. So, so when you first started to realize, oh wow, I'm really getting some great results here. Of course, the students didn't know that right off the hop, right? They're just in it, doing it, and
no. I mean, a lot of them don't even. I'll be honest. To some people, it just sounds like a fun time, and they don't. So what's great about it is they come in and they have a good time, and that even takes more of the pressure off of them. They're just there to have a good time, but they end up leaving knowing. I mean, these 5 people now, they know the basics of improv now. They know how to perform with other people now. It just kind of sped up the process in a long way. And I don't normally have a workshop that has 30 people in it. Like I just don't. I normally try to keep it smaller. But that one was just I was working with a group, and they brought in 30 people, and that was the other thing I had to adjust in that Providence workshop. But we got to a place where I had this moment where I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Everyone grab a chair. We put the chairs in a big circle. I had them turn the chairs away from each other and sit down. So now they're in a big circle facing away from each other. And then I had them just do audio improv. But they were, they could all see what they were talking about. I had done a lot of reading on altered states of consciousness in general, partially because performing improv puts you in an altered state where your brain is just functioning at a higher speed, a higher efficiency, if you can lock into it. And then you'll come off stage and be like, what did we just do? I don't remember what I just did. And so I was looking for other ways to activate parts of that experience in, not on stage, but in practices and classes. And I was reading a lot about things like tribes where they take young boys out and make them swallow red ants so they have visions, all these strange things. But another thing that I'll do is I'll have people do jumping jacks or dance, and then sit down and in the dark, again, do just audio improv where they're just doing the sounds and the voices of it. And it's almost like some sort of vision quest we do with the improv.
Wow. That does. And do you turn the lights off for that? You might as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, lights are off for that. With the cannabis, I don't turn the lights off because it makes people a little sleepy. So I that's why I have them face away from each other for that.
Okay, tell me another. Hey, tell us. You know what a herald is, right?
I'm sorry, you just cut out.
Okay, you know what a herald is.
Yeah, hello.
Hello. Oh, he's gone. Yeah, well, that was fun. I'm going to call him right back. We're not done yet. Gee whiz. Come on, folks. Are you there?
Yeah, live show. What's up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, live show. Yeah, it's cacking out. I can hear you.
Hey, what'd you say? Tell us another what?
Do you know what of course you know what a herald is.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So tell everybody what a herald is, and I'm sure you must have tried this just for the folks, because not everybody knows what a herald is, and you'll tell it better than I will, because I'm a stand-up and I'll just use scorn. Okay. But tell them what it is, and tell us if you had any kind of affectations towards that from the cannabis, from that game.
Oh, okay. So a herald is a sort of a standard, like, I think of it as a learning a tool for learning improv, long form improv. It was created. Oh God, I remember when he came up with it. There was this guy Del Close that came up with it. He was big into witchcraft and heroin, and he created an improv form. He created an improv form called the herald. And the herald is simple. It's you get a suggestion from an audience. You might do something called an opening, where you pull that suggestion apart, whether it's through words or movement or scene work or whatever, and then that just gives you more ideas to work with. And then from there, you go into the herald. And the herald is, let's say, scene A, scene B, and scene C. It's 3 different scenes that have nothing to do with each other, but all derived from this suggestion in some way. Then you revisit those scenes. you revisit. Well, actually, I should say after the first 3 scenes, there's then another scene called a group game. Everybody can come into that scene and just do even something silly. It doesn't really matter. It's just kind of, some people think of it as the palate cleanser. It's just a way to kind of break up the flow of the set. Then you go back to the characters or settings or ideas, anything you like from scene A, B, and C, and you do scene A1, scene B1, scene C1, and you just do some new iteration on the ideas that you like. You do another one of these palette cleanser group game scenes, and then again, you come back and you revisit the ideas from A, B, and C in their most heightened, most absurd form.
So you have to be pretty well versed on. I don't know if that's your siren or mine, but anyway,
that's mine.
Is it really? Oh, it sounded like a.
Yeah, I'm in a very noisy part of Brooklyn. Yeah.
I'll bet. We get that too. Every show gets a siren someplace.
Sure.
Yeah. So
so it's this kind of formulaic structure that's a way that people can get together and put together a comedy show. But that structure also shows up in a lot of modern TV shows like Seinfeld or 30 Rock, where you'll have 3 separate threads that all come together in the very end.
Right. And so you've taught. Have you done? Have you played with that while using cannabis at all? That structure particularly?
I haven't with that structure in particular, partially because I find the Herald to be fairly restrictive at times, and my goal, especially in these work, I do certainly teach it and work with it in other classes and other workshops, but in these, it's more about in the moment. It's more about opening people up rather than having them adhere to a set of rules or guidelines. And I find the Herald to be somewhat constraining at times. Okay. So I want to open these people up. Yeah. Other forms that I teach, I'll teach like the improvised movie. There's a group in Kansas City, Missouri that performs, that I've coached for 3 years over webcam, called That's No Movie. And they perform to comic book conventions and sci-fi conventions and things, but they improvise a movie on stage. They tell you what to see, what you're hearing, what you're picturing. They play all the characters. And that's the sort of, that's a kind of form that I like a little more.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So you were able to travel around with this. Are you only doing the cannabis in New York, or you're doing it in these other places as well?
No, definitely. I'm doing it in other places. I would like, my current, one of my current plans right now is to reach out to theaters where cannabis is legal, which there's more now, which is amazing, and run this along with some other workshops that I teach. When I did the workshop in Providence, I also taught them. They wanted to do a Halloween show. They said, we want to do a Tales from the Crypt show. And I said, okay. And so I just made up a Tales from the Crypt improv form that's amazing. Their performance of it, I'll say, is just so good. And I taught that over 2 days. And then I also taught the Improv 420 workshop.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So let me get back to your. I wanted to get back to that thread where you said that these often perceived to be terrible things, these conditions that we have, mental conditions, and you fight against this better than anybody I've ever heard about. So how do you push back on that? And what exactly is your whole rationale with? Because ideally, I mean, most people think, do you really want to have this particular mental disorder, be it depression or anxiety or what have you, or insecurities, or do you not? And you're saying in certain ways it's okay. So just expand on that a little bit.
Well, I think it is important that I think everyone should be checking in with themselves regardless, but especially if you've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder or any of these other things, I think you really do need to keep tabs on yourself. I think that therapy is very, very important for all of this, and because that's going to help guide you. And then also, for a lot of people, prescription drugs work well. I still take, to this day, I still take Ritalin. Okay. Yeah, and that helps me. What's important is medication should be working in a way that it alleviates some of the difficult effects of your condition, but it allows you to still be the sort of to have all of the benefits of it, the creativity, the drive. People with ADHD can read other people immediately. That's what helps me be a good teacher and coach and director. And I would not want to give that up. It's a set of skills that most people don't have, but I have because of a lack of certain chemicals in my body.
That's incredible, because what I've experienced, speaking about these kinds of things with people, and reading official publications, official breakdowns, and scientific stuff about these illnesses, or whatever you want to call them, something that's good is that I know a lot of people in the entertainment business specifically, but some other people too, but a lot of people in the entertainment business who are very funny, very, very funny people. And a lot of them, and I'm not going to name names, of course, but a lot of them that I know that have told me anyway that they don't want to shed all of their mental problems, hang-up situations. Maybe they have a persona of drinking all the time. They don't really quit drinking, because they take it on stage and they're funny when they're drinking, and people respond well and they have a career. There's a genuine fear there of even doing the work to change, what would effectively be problems. They go, yeah, I know they're problems, but God, I'd hate to change my whole psyche, my whole physicality, my everything, and then maybe I'm not funny anymore. Maybe I don't want to go on stage anymore. Maybe I'm interested in something else now. What's that?
The fear. Yeah, no, that is the fear of people with a mental condition. They're worried they're going to give up what makes them special or unique, or what gives them an edge. And I'm going to tell you, you get to keep those things when you go into therapy and engage in medication. The goal is that you keep the things that work for you. So if anybody out there is worried about losing what makes them special, losing their ability to be creative by getting healthier, I'm telling you, the goal is to keep those things while also getting healthier.
Okay. Well, that's amazing. I've never heard that. That's what I mean. Everybody either strives to get rid of all those problems, or but you're seeing some benefits to these characteristics, because not everybody has them, right? Not everybody has them.
No, certainly. I mean, I pick up on body language. I would say, I live near. I mean, I teach near Times Square a lot, and that can get a little overwhelming. But if I can just center myself, it gets overwhelming in that I'm picking up on everyone's body language around me. I tend to be kind of empathetic and just pick up what people's emotions are, and it can get a little overwhelming unless I take a moment to just center myself and focus up. But that can be a difficult thing. But in a classroom, it's great. I can tell when somebody's about to make a move. I can tell when somebody's got an idea but they don't know how to use it. I can tell somebody's imagining something or pulling an idea from memory. And I love that I have those skill sets, and I wouldn't give those up. But it's also important to me that I'm able to live a full life.
And they come from your ADHD? That you're able to. I don't understand the connection there. It's fascinating. I don't dispute it for a second, but I've never heard this before. It's fascinating to me. And I don't know how. Okay, so you have ADHD. Now you're supposed to be able to read everybody? That's incredible.
That's one of the things that makes having ADHD difficult, is there are things that you can do that other people don't even understand you can do. But sometimes simple things that are simple to other people are actually a little bit more difficult for you. But ADHD, people with ADHD make great teachers and therapists, counselors. They're very good at salespeople. They're very good at sales. It's just because people with ADHD are sensitive and are picking up more information than most people. We're just kind of like opened up and raw in a way. And if you can learn how to filter that and you can learn how to direct it, it can be a very, very, very effective tool.
Have you ever heard of NLP?
What's NLP? There's so many acronyms. What is this?
It's the neuro-linguistic programming.
Right. Yes. I think that I'm doing some version of that.
I think you are too. It's what it reminds me of when I hear about it, that you're able to read signals. I saw an interesting video the other day where a guy was talking about guilty people, murderers, that kind of thing, and police interviews. And some of these cats are really good at picking that stuff up, and they'll ask questions and lead people into confessing or being able to prove things by reading their. Like there was this one particular case where the guy says, the investigator says he's asking the alleged killer if he had anything to do at all with convincing someone else, sort of like a Manson thing, to convince someone else to go and do something. And the guy said, no, absolutely not. But there he is, slightly nodding his head yes and no, up and down instead of side to side.
Right.
And he's I think this guy's lying. And then sure enough, they found out exactly the same thing. And he said, you wouldn't even believe, he says, I'm going to do it now for you. And he does the little head nod thing. And he says, actually, that's way bigger than it was. You could just tell, you could see it, you get honed, you get used to it. And there's all these signals. Yeah. Have you seen True Romance? You know that scene with Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper?
Yeah.
Where
It's been a long time, but
yeah, he says a guy's got 17 tells when he lies. A woman has 20, but a guy has 17. Little physicalities. So that's what you're heightened to that when you have ADHD.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And then what was important was that I learned how to make that work for teaching. So whether it's with Thunderbolt Comedy, which is where I'm teaching improv, and that's where I have my Improv 420 workshop, or I've got a newer company with a partner called Engage Improv for Life, and we train all sorts of soft skills. We teach people how to talk to family members they're estranged from. We teach people how to be better communicators and more empathetic and more emotionally engaged. What I do is I pick up on all these movements of people, and I figure out ways, even in the moment, I kind of create a maze that they have to go through these improv exercises. And when they come out the other side, they have a new set of skills. They're better able to speak to somebody. They're better able to understand their loved ones. They're better able to sell something. So I have, it's been very beneficial for what I do.
And it must have been a great thing to figure that out that day.
Oh, definitely.
You're 20 years in and you go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm going to get these guys ripped, and then we'll see what happens. But they're not ripped, though, right? They're just, still functioning.
They're definitely still functioning. It's I don't want them smoking a whole bowl. Maybe a hit off of a one hitter or something like that, and that's enough.
Yeah.
Just to kind of bring those things forward. I think I might have said earlier, everything for me centers on the limbic system in improv. Limbic is in the back of your brain. It's the oldest part of your brain evolutionarily. And
I don't recall talking about this. Maybe maybe expand on it if we touched on it. Maybe, but
sure. I don't think we did. No.
Yeah,
I think I started going there and I went some other way. But so I mean, what I see a lot in improv is I see people that are either they're putting pressure on themselves to be interesting, so they're putting a lot of work on their right brain. Or they're trying to do improv the right way, and they're putting a lot of work on their left brain, on their logic center. But if I get people focused on behavior and emotion and long-term memory, which are situated in the back brain, everything opens up. Everything becomes available to them without conscious work. And so one of the things that marijuana, that cannabis has allowed me to do is to elevate that ability of the back brain and of the limbic system, of the lizard brain, to be guiding them through their improv rather than something that they're trying to suppress so that they can be really creative or really smart.
Wow. That's specific. You're like a specialist. This is great.
I am. Here's the thing. For the past 4 years, I have focused entirely on teaching improv just independently. People come to me. I'm not affiliated with a theater directly, but people come to me, and I have used it as my laboratory to an extent to try to understand people better and try to get them to where they need to go. Something that I do is I picked this up from a psychological a psychological test that I found one time, and what it was this: they would tell students that they were going to be participating in this experiment, and as they walked them down the hall to where the experiment was supposedly going to happen, they would say, well, after the experiment is over, we have chocolate cake and we have fruit. Which one would you like? Now, some of these students before they went down that hall, were given a 7-digit number to remember to give to the people that were running the test, running the experiment. And the people that held onto that 7-digit number generally wanted chocolate cake more than the people that didn't. Right? So if I've got someone that I'm teaching improv and they're getting in their head and they're worried about what they're doing, I will give them a 7-digit number that they have to repeat to me after that scene, and the scene will be amazing from that point on.
Okay, you're a mad scientist then. Basically, we're gone into that level. That's incredible. I love this. And then
that's what I do.
The other folks will eat the fruit, and you can pin this down. This is so fun. Hey, when you were speaking with anyone, not to mention names or whatever, but just like in an anonymous fashion, other people that attend your class, like these folks that have gone on to work on these television shows and movies, etc. Has anyone else? Have you been able to form another friendship or contact based on a person who also feels, came at it with ADD or ADHD, etc. The things that you have managed to use as tools rather than to suffer from?
Well, I'm very open. I tell people that I teach from essentially what were originally my coping mechanisms with ADHD. I mention it all the time. I think it's important for people to know that. But then any sort of a vulnerability for me allows more vulnerability from them. And frequently I find that people do have ADHD inattentive type, which is what I have. A lot of people, comedy is just filled with people with depression and bipolar disorder. There are certainly schizophrenics. There are certainly, people with borderline personality disorder. And so much anxiety, so much social anxiety, which an audience might not expect from the people performing on a stage live, doing improv in front of them. So much anxiety and social anxiety disorder in comedy and improv.
Yeah, I had a bunch of that. I didn't know what it was. When I was starting out, I got off amateur night, and then I was going around doing gigs. And every time the gig would get closer, particularly on the road, the hours leading up to actually going into the club or the venue or whatever it was, I would just be like, oh no, I won't be able to do this again. Like, I can't do it. I don't trust myself that they're going to come, and then, consistently would bang through, get another good set and just keep going. And, you have a few bad sets here and there, who doesn't? But I was amazed that I couldn't seem to get past the notion of the fear of going on the next time. I think that took about 4 years to iron out for myself.
That makes sense. Yeah. That's something a lot of people go through. Can I ask you a question, actually?
Sure, yeah.
How has cannabis affected anxiety for you?
Well, when you're dead, you don't have anxiety. And
Sure.
I managed to avoid that appointment with the Grim Reaper.
Right.
But aside from the anxiety, the initial, I remember the very first time I smoked a joint, which I was well too young to do. And it was probably, it was super powerful, or it hit me that way. And it immediately felt amazing and different and weird. And then within about 10 minutes or some small piece of time, I did get very paranoid, like never before in my life. And then I was worried because my mom was coming home from work, and now it's dinner time and I'm still high. I remember sitting in the chair in the living room, just watching TV and staring at the tube, pretending to be the straightest, most sober person you've ever seen in your life. And I think I got away with it because she never brought it up. But I was just so transfixed by, I can't let her know I'm high. I shouldn't say anything, and very anxiety laden. But again, you're not ready. You're too young. It's too quick. And gradually over time, I learned how to use it better. So for my anxiety, it just takes the edge right off. It's like having a rough piece of wood handrail, and then you've sanded it down really nicely. That's the difference that I feel with it.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and it's not just about performing. You know, there are a lot of different situations where it came up when I was going in and out of the hospital for tests every month, or the doctor's office for tests every month. I would find that, and this is just recently, but because of the illness, I would get more anxiety laden than I could remember, because I'm like, okay, 1 week I have to go in and get the blood tested, and then the next week I get the readings, and we hear what the doctor has to say about it. And even though you're feeling fine all month, I always get a little bit nervous, and on the way to, oh God, what if he says something bad again? Oh God. And you're making up all this shit. And then he's like, oh yeah, everything's good. And you're reset back to normal. So while I have that anxiousness, if I'm on my way to those, potentially life-changing or life-dampening events, I still partake, and I find it takes the edge off. That's what I like it for. That's why people like to drink, I think, is take the edge off. You know, you've had a long, terrible day, and they just want to go dull. But it doesn't make me go dull. It just diminishes that anxiety state, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, improv has allowed me to take care of some of the things like that. If I'm in a dentist chair, I can make myself just pass out. I can just like conk out real quick.
Oh, that's the gas they use for that, I think.
Oh yeah, sure. I wish. I've never actually gotten that before. No, it's so funny. But like all we're doing is we're talking about mindsets, and we're talking about altered states. We're talking about states of being, and cannabis will help you get there. But it's certainly just one of a number of ways to help you adjust and help you live your life in an easier way, or in a more efficient way, even sometimes.
And have you thought about why, when you're saying all those things that I happen to agree with, it's called a crutch by those in power, and then if you're using a prescription drug, it's of course normal, and it's not a crutch at all. You need that; it's your medicine. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Because I know you were talking about the opioid crisis that's being treated differently from everything else.
Yeah.
Because it's mostly a white issue. But when the same exact thing was happening with other drugs, such as crack, the same desperation of we have to do something wasn't coming about. I don't know. I could really get into that. I get really frustrated with people trying to fix the effects of a problem instead of the source of the problem. And really, to me, the source of the problem is often just is income inequality, racism, and sexism.
Oh yeah, those are our founding pillars.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't.
Go ahead, take a dive. I'm interested.
Yeah, I don't know. It is frustrating me. It's not just. It's funny. Marijuana is becoming more acceptable, which is great. But the FDA, like in the United States, the FDA is going after other things that can't be trademarked and copyrighted. So whether it's Kava or Kratom or whatever, they're going after anything that a pharmaceutical company can't say, oh, we invented this.
Yeah. And then now in Canada we have this. I just said earlier on the show, we have a pharmaceutical company heavily involved now. All of a sudden, this is big news. And of course, one of our largest, at least in Eastern Canada, one of the largest drug purveyors is Shoppers Drug Mart, who have been never friendly to the notion. Now they're in on it, you know. And they weren't included in the legislation as it was originally written. But dollars pass hands, right? That's what happens.
Right. Now that there's a chance to gentrify the cannabis industry, and get money off of it and make it a whiter industry, then that's what they're gonna do. It's very frustrating because it's very frustrating.
Oh, you're not acting either. I know you're genuinely frustrated. No, it's awful. No,
it's important to me. Like, I think first of all, the income inequality in general is very frustrating to me. I saw some charts. You always see charts on the internet. Well, I just saw stuff recently that showed how much of pollution and just what we've done to the earth is just being done by the top 1% of people with money in the world.
Yeah.
And how much people are always talking about overcrowding or overpopulation on the earth. But if we just shared wealth everyone could actually have the resources they need and have a healthier life and a happier life. And it's very frustrating to me that we just made these kind of arbitrary agreements along the line where we go like, yeah, people can accrue wealth far past what they actually need while other people are suffering. And it just seems crazy to me that we can't go, you know what, let's just revise that.
Yeah, I've been banging on here about the monetary policy in this country for a while, both on and off the show and other shows. And yeah, it's completely, it's an inequitable situation. It's also unsustainable. But here we go. We're still going with this.
Right.
You know, there's a financial collapse. It doesn't make sense to me that the house my parents bought for $15,000 has been paid off and then sold again at a higher number and then resold 3 or 4 more times, and now it's over $1 million. It's crazy.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah. So listen, where can folks get a hold of you? Because we have to get going here, Chris. It's been really artistically fantastic talking to you. This is a great idea. I'm going to try to apply some of these things in my own endeavors.
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at Chris Griswold. That's ChrisGriswold. You can find me pretty easily there. I just had to redo the company that I do these Improv 420 workshops under, Thunderbolt Comedy. I just got the website back up. If you go to thunderboltcomedy.com, you can see about upcoming New York City workshops. And then also, if people are interested in having these come to their area, I'd be happy to travel with these and bring them to people's homes, people's theaters, and run these anywhere.
That's amazing. Would you consider a trip north of the border?
You bet I would.
All right. Well, I'm going to look into this. I think it's going to be something that we can try to do here. There's a couple of places in Toronto where we might be able to do that. So I'll get back to you later on about that. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. 20 years in, you found a new twist.
Yeah, that's right.
That's amazing. Good for you. Well, thank you very much, Chris, and thanks for listening to the show, and we'll have you on again sometime.
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Chris Griswold. We had some connectivity issues, nowhere near as bad as it has been with a couple of other guests in the past where I had to bail on a couple. But we managed to pull it out with Hangouts. Google Hangouts sometimes will work for you. That's Google Hangouts. All right, so a couple more pieces to get to before we wrap the show for another day on this sunny